On the edge of a sleepy town where the fields stretched wide and the wind whispered through the tall grasses, Emma Collins stood alone beneath the fading light of dusk. Her hand rested protectively on her swollen belly, the weight of her pregnancy pressing down on her weary frame as heavily as the burdens she carried inside. 6 months along and homeless, Emma's world had narrowed to the desperate search for a place to simply rest without fear. The chill in the air hinted at the coming night, and with no shelter in sight, the looming silhouette of an old barn caught her eye. A ramshackle structure, weathered by years of neglect, but still standing firm against the encroaching darkness. Her breath came in shallow bursts, exhaustion dragging at her muscles. But she forced herself forward, each step a quiet declaration of survival. This barn, forgotten by most, seemed like the only refuge she could find before the cold settled in. She reached the creaking wooden door and pushed it open with a groan that echoed through the hollow interior. Dust motes floated in the last rays of sunlight, filtering through gaps in the boards, and the scent of aged hay and earth filled her senses, a strange comfort in her turmoil. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Emma's eyes adjusted to the dimness as she stepped inside, the floor uneven beneath her careful steps. She scanned the space, noting old farming tools hung haphazardly on the walls, a rusted wheelbarrow resting against a corner, and broken crates scattered near the far end. The barn was silent except for the distant call of a night bird and the occasional creak of the wooden beams settling. It was far from a home, but it was shelter. And for tonight, that was enough. Her thoughts drifted back to the recent months that had brought her here, to this moment of fragile hope. Just weeks ago, Emma had been living in a small apartment downtown, clinging to a job she barely managed to hold on to. The layoffs came swiftly and without mercy, her name lost in a long list of those no longer needed. The eviction notice had arrived shortly after, a cruel reminder that stability was slipping through her fingers. Then came the end of her engagement, her fiancé's departure when he learned of her pregnancy, leaving Emma isolated and adrift. Her family, scattered and distant, offered little more than cautious words and empty promises. With no one to turn to and the bills mounting, Emma's world had contracted into a series of desperate steps, searching shelters, pleading with acquaintances, and scouring the edges of town for any place that would take her in. The barn was a last resort, a shadow of a dream for safety and rest. But it was all she had. Settling against a sturdy post, Emma lowered herself slowly, careful not to jolt her aching body. Her fingers traced the rough wood, grounding her in the present as memories swirled behind her tired eyes. She thought of the mornings when she used to wake to the sound of her alarm, the smell of coffee brewing in a warm kitchen, and the laughter shared with friends at the office. Those days felt like another lifetime, swallowed by the relentless tide of loss and uncertainty. Yet, amid the despair, a fragile ember of hope flickered. The small life growing within her demanded strength she hadn't known she possessed. She whispered a quiet promise to the child she carried, vowing to endure whatever hardships came their way. This barn, with its cracked boards and forgotten corners, would be their sanctuary for now. The night deepened, and Emma wrapped her coat tighter around herself, settling onto a patch of old straw she found behind a pile of crates. The chills seeped in through the gaps, but she welcomed the cold as a reminder she was still alive, still fighting. She closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself a moment of rest before the long night stretched ahead. Inside the barn, the silence was punctuated the soft rustling of animals unseen, the steady drip of water from a leaky roof, and the distant hum of wind weaving through the countryside. Emma's mind wandered, tracing the threads of her recent life, the eviction notice pinned to her door, the final call from her employer, the empty apartment echoing with absence. Each memory was a wound, yet each also a step toward this moment of fragile refuge. Her thoughts turned to the future, uncertain and daunting. How would she find a place to live once the weeks grew colder? How would she care for a child with no home or family to lean on? The questions pressed in, but Emma pushed them aside, focusing instead on the immediate need to survive the night. As she lay back on the straw, the ceiling beams forming a lattice of shadows above her, Emma noticed a narrow staircase tucked away in the corner of the barn. It was old and rickety, but it promised another level, another space hidden from the open floor. Curiosity stirred within her, mingling with the practical hope that perhaps the loft might offer better shelter from the draft. Gathering her strength, Emma rose carefully, her hand steadying against the wall as she approached the staircase. Each step creaked beneath her weight, a reminder of the barn's age and neglect. At the top, she found a small loft, dust-covered and filled with forgotten remnants. A broken trunk, faded blankets, and scattered papers caught in the dim light. The loft felt like a secret place, a hidden world suspended above the earth. Emma's heart quickened with a mixture of hope and caution. This space, tucked away from prying eyes and the chill of the night, might be the shelter she needed. She set about clearing a corner, laying down the blankets she found and arranging them into a makeshift bed. As she worked, the weight of her situation pressed down again. But the act of creating a small haven within the barn gave her a flicker of control. This loft, forgotten and neglected, was now her refuge. Here, beneath the cracked roof and stars beyond, Emma Collins would rest, gathering strength for the uncertain days ahead. The night settled in fully, the barn's shadows deepening around her as Emma lay down on the rough blankets, her hand resting once more on the growing life inside her. Outside, the wind whispered through the fields, carrying with it the promise of change and the quiet resilience of a woman determined to survive. The next morning, pale light filtered through the gaps in the barn's weathered boards, casting faint stripes across the dusty floor. Emma woke slowly, the stiffness in her joints a reminder of the night spent on the rough blankets in the loft. Despite the discomfort, a quiet sense of determination settled over her. She was safe for now, and that was enough to push her forward. After a few moments of gathering her thoughts, Emma rose carefully and began to explore the small loft more thoroughly. The space was cramped, with a low ceiling that forced her to stoop as she moved among the scattered remnants left behind decades ago. The broken trunk she had glanced at the night before beckoned with a silent promise, its surface cracked and worn by time. Her fingers brushed the latch, hesitant at first. There was something compelling about the mystery it held, a secret waiting patiently to be uncovered. Emma's breath caught as she lifted the lid, the hinges creaking softly in protest. Inside, dust rose like a thin cloud, settling slowly on the faded contents. Yellowed papers, folded letters tied with a brittle ribbon, and a worn leather-bound journal. Her heart quickened as she pulled the items out carefully, the journal resting heavy in her hands. The leather cover was cracked, the pages fragile, but remarkably intact. Emma traced the faded ink on the first page, the handwriting neat and deliberate, a stark contrast to the chaos in her own life. The journal belonged to someone named Margaret, a woman who had lived on this very farm many years before. The first entries spoke of daily tasks, tending to animals, mending fences, but soon shifted to more personal reflections. The challenges of pregnancy, the loneliness of rural life, and the weight of expectation. Emma felt a strange kinship as she read, the words echoing her own fears and hopes. Days ago, Emma's world had been reduced to survival and uncertainty. But now, with Margaret's voice reaching out through time, she found a flicker of connection. The journal's pages revealed a woman grappling with isolation and hardship, yet clinging fiercely to the future growing within her. Emma's fingers trembled as she turned each page, absorbing the resilience etched into every line. Among the letters, Emma discovered notes addressed to Margaret from a friend, offering comfort and encouragement. One letter, dated decades ago, described a harsh winter and the community's struggle to endure. The words painted vivid pictures of hardship and courage, of small acts that made a difference in the lives of many. Emma's pulse quickened. This was more than a personal diary. It was a testament to strength and survival. She sat back against the loft's wooden beam, clutching the journal to her chest, feeling the weight of history settle around her. The barn, once a forgotten relic, was now a vessel of stories. Stories of women who had faced trials much like her own. The discovery filled her with a quiet resolve. Perhaps this place held more than shelter. Perhaps it was a bridge between past and present, a source of strength she could draw from. As sunlight warmed the loft, Emma's mind raced with questions. Who was Margaret, really? How had she managed to endure the isolation and fear? What had become of the life she carried? Emma knew she needed to learn more, to piece together the fragments of a life long past that now intertwined with her own. Yet beneath the excitement, a shadow of fear lingered. Opening the trunk and uncovering these intimate artifacts felt like stepping into a delicate world. What if the barn's owners or others learned of her presence here? What if her fragile refuge was threatened? The uncertainty pressed down on her, but she pushed it aside, focusing instead on the fragile hope growing within the pages before her. Emma spent the day in the loft, reading and rereading the journal and letters, absorbing every detail. The barn's quiet seemed to protect her as she delved deeper into Margaret's world. The woman's words painted scenes of long days spent in labor and care, moments of joy and despair, and the unspoken fears that came with bringing new life into a harsh world. As the afternoon light waned, Emma gathered the papers carefully, wrapping them in a faded cloth she found nearby. The discoveries were precious and fragile, much like her own situation, and she vowed to keep them safe. The chest would remain her secret for now, a hidden treasure in a forgotten loft. Later, as she prepared to descend the stairs, Emma paused, her fingers lingering on the worn wood. The barn's shadows seemed to shift around her, as if alive with stories waiting to be told. The cold air creeping through the gaps felt less intrusive now, tempered by the warmth of newfound purpose. Outside, the wind stirred the tall grasses, carrying with it the scents of earth and distant rain. Emma stepped down from the loft, her steps lighter despite the ache in her legs. The barn, once a symbol of desperation, was becoming a place of discovery and quiet strength. That evening, as twilight deepened, Emma sat near the barn's open door, the journal resting in her lap. She thought of the path that had led her here, fraught with loss and uncertainty, and of the fragile life she carried within her. Margaret's story was a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could take root. The settling darkness brought a chill, and Emma wrapped her coat tighter around her, the barn's worn walls offering a fragile shield against the night. The stars began to twinkle faintly overhead, distant and steady. Within the quiet stillness, Emma found a moment of peace, a pause in the storm. Her fingers traced the leather spine of the journal once more as she whispered a silent promise. To honor the past, to protect the present, and to find the strength to face whatever lay ahead. The barn's secrets were now hers, and with them, a fragile thread of hope weaving through the fabric of her own story. As the night deepened, Emma settled back into the loft, the chest tucked safely in a corner beside her makeshift bed. She closed her eyes, the weight of exhaustion pulling at her. But beneath it, a spark of determination burned brightly. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, she had found a place to rest, and a story to carry with her on the uncertain road ahead. The days that followed in the old barn loft became a rhythm for Emma, a quiet sanctuary where time seemed to stretch and fold around the fragile life growing inside her. Each morning, she reached instinctively for Margaret's journal, its pages worn soft from repeated reading, the faded ink revealing glimpses of a woman's strength and vulnerability from a long-gone era. The more Emma delved into Margaret's writings, the deeper her connection grew, not just to the woman who had once lived here, but to a shared experience that transcended the years. Margaret's words were candid and unvarnished. She wrote of aching limbs and restless nights, of the isolation that wrapped around her like the cold wind outside the barn. But beneath the hardships lay a fierce determination, a hope that sustained her through the darkest moments. Emma found herself tracing Margaret's footsteps through the farm's seasons, feeling the weight of loneliness and the small triumphs of daily survival. One entry, written in delicate script, described a particularly difficult pregnancy. Margaret confessed to fears that echoed Emma's own, the uncertainty of bringing new life into a world that offered little comfort. Emma's fingers trembled as she read, imagining the woman's hands folding the letter, the quiet resolve in her voice. The shared experience of maternity across generations and struggles wove a thread between them, a bond forged in both pain and hope. Emma found solace in knowing she was not alone, that another woman had faced the same fears and uncertainties. This discovery kindled a strength within her, a quiet courage to keep moving forward despite the odds. Beyond the pages of the journal, Emma's curiosity grew. She began to explore the barn itself more thoroughly, searching for traces of Margaret's life beyond the written word. The old tools hanging on the walls, the faded quilts tucked away in corners, all seemed to whisper stories, waiting to be uncovered. In one dusty crate, she found a photograph, its edges curled and worn. The image showed a young woman with a gentle smile, Margaret, no doubt, standing beside a weathered farmhouse under a clear sky. Emma held the photograph close, the woman's eyes seeming to meet hers across the years. The connection was profound, grounding Emma in a history she had never known but now felt deeply entwined with. It was as if Margaret's spirit lingered in the barn, offering quiet encouragement in the face of hardship. But the past was not without its shadows. As Emma continued reading, she uncovered letters hinting at isolation not just from the world, but from the very community that surrounded Margaret. The notes spoke of whispered judgments and expectations placed upon a young woman struggling to find her place. Emma recognized the echoes of similar pressures in her own life. The silent judgments, the loneliness that came from being different or unsupported. The barn, once merely a shelter from the elements, became a refuge for Emma's soul. In the quiet moments between reading and resting, she allowed herself to imagine Margaret's life, the laughter and tears, the moments of joy and despair that defined a woman's journey through hardship. This imagining brought a sense of companionship that softened the sharp edges of Emma's own loneliness. One afternoon, as the soft rain pattered against the barn's roof, Emma read an entry describing a town crisis, a harsh winter that brought hardship to many families. Margaret wrote of organizing efforts to aid neighbors, of secret trips through snowdrifts to deliver food and firewood. The courage and kindness hidden in those words stirred something within Emma, a desire to not only survive, but to connect and contribute, even in her fragile state. The discovery of Margaret's quiet bravery gave Emma a new perspective on her own circumstances. The barn was more than a refuge. It was a place where courage had once taken root, where one woman's actions had rippled outward to touch many lives. Emma felt the weight of that legacy settle upon her shoulders, a mantle she was only beginning to understand. Yet, even as the connection deepened, Emma's own challenges pressed close. The physical demands of pregnancy grew heavier, and the uncertainty of her future loomed large. The barn was a fragile sanctuary, vulnerable to the whims of weather and time. She knew she could not remain hidden forever, but for now, the stories within the journal provided a lifeline. In the quiet evenings, Emma found herself speaking softly to the empty loft, sharing fragments of her day, her fears, and her hopes. The barn seemed to listen, holding her words in the stillness. Sometimes she imagined Margaret's presence beside her, a steady hand on her shoulder, a shared understanding that transcended decades. With each passing day, Emma's resolve strengthened. The journal's pages had become a mirror, reflecting both the past and the promise of survival. She realized that Margaret's story was not just a relic to be uncovered, but a beacon lighting the path ahead. As twilight settled over the fields, Emma sat by the barn's open doorway, the journal resting in her lap. The cool air carried the faint scent of earth and rain, mingling with the warmth of the fading day. She breathed deeply, feeling the life within her move gently, a reminder of the future she was determined to protect. Outside, the world carried on, unaware of the quiet bond forming within the barn's walls. Emma's eyes lifted to the darkening sky, stars beginning to pierce the dusk like scattered jewels. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of connection, not just to Margaret, but to a lineage of women who had faced hardship with grace and courage. The barn, with its cracked beams and weathered boards, was no longer just a shelter. It was a testament to resilience, a place where stories intertwined and hope endured. Emma closed the journal gently, holding it close as she prepared to rest, her heart buoyed by the knowledge that she was part of something greater than herself. In the stillness of the night, beneath the quiet watch of stars, Emma allowed herself to dream. The future was uncertain, but within the pages of Margaret's story, she had found a companion, a reminder that even in isolation, strength could be found, and that survival was a shared journey across time. As sleep claimed her, Emma carried with her the whispered courage of the past, ready to face whatever trials awaited, buoyed by the unspoken connection that would sustain her through the days to come. The days grew colder, the chill in the air seeping through the barn's worn boards and settling deep into Emma's bones. Each morning, she awoke with a lingering ache, the weight of her pregnancy pressing more insistently against her ribs. The loft, once a sanctuary filled with fragile hope, now felt increasingly exposed to the elements. The makeshift bed of old blankets and straw offered little comfort against the creeping cold, and Emma found herself shivering beneath her threadbare coat more often than not. The barn, however, remained her only refuge, a fragile shield against the harshness of the world beyond. With dwindling supplies and no access to running water or heat, Emma grappled daily with the basic necessities of survival. Food was scarce. Her stomach growled with hunger more times than she cared to admit. She scavenged what she could from discarded scraps near the farm's edge and the occasional kindness of strangers passing through the town. Despite the hardships, Emma clung to the journal and letters she had found, their worn pages a source of comfort and strength. But as the days wore on, the fear of being discovered grew heavier. The barn was private, yes, but it was also vulnerable. The property belonged to someone who might return at any moment, or, worse, someone who might not welcome an unexpected tenant. One afternoon, as Emma gathered what little firewood she had managed to collect, a figure appeared on the horizon. A man walking along the dirt road that led past the farm. His steps slowed as he approached the barn, and Emma's heart hammered in her chest. She ducked behind a stack of crates, clutching the journal to her chest, her breath catching in her throat. The man was tall, with a weathered face and a kind expression that softened the hard lines of his features. As he drew nearer, he called out, his voice carrying a warmth that surprised Emma despite the chill. "Hey there. You all right in here?" Emma hesitated, unsure whether to reveal herself. The barn had been her secret sanctuary, but the desperation of her situation overrode her fear. Slowly, she stepped from her hiding place, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. The man smiled gently. "Name's Tom. I live just down the road. I saw the barn door open and thought someone might need help." Relief and uncertainty warred within Emma's chest. She wanted to trust him, but years of hardship had taught her caution. Yet Tom's genuine concern was undeniable. He pulled a small bundle from his coat, a few loaves of bread, some fruit, and a warm blanket. "Thought you might need these," he said, offering them without expectation. Emma's eyes filled with tears. The kindness was overwhelming, a balm to the loneliness that had settled like dust inside her. She accepted the gifts, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. I don't have much." Tom nodded understandingly, settling onto a nearby crate. "You're not alone, you know. Folks round here look out for each other, even if it doesn't always seem that way." For the first time in weeks, Emma felt a flicker of connection beyond the pages of Margaret's journal. This stranger's kindness was a lifeline, a reminder that community still existed somewhere beyond her isolation. Over the next few days, Tom became a steady presence. He brought supplies, helped Emma gather firewood, and checked on her health with a quiet concern that warmed her heart. Their conversations were simple. Shared stories of the land, memories of past winters, cautious hopes for the future. Tom's company eased the crushing weight of loneliness that had threatened to consume her. But amid this newfound support, a shadow loomed. News had spread through the town about a property developer interested in the land surrounding the barn. Plans were underway to demolish the aging structures and build new housing, a prospect that threatened Emma's fragile refuge. One evening, as the sky darkened and the wind picked up, Tom shared the troubling news. "They're serious about tearing this place down soon. The developer's been making calls, pushing the council to approve the plans." Emma's heart sank. The barn was more than wood and nails. It was her shelter, her sanctuary, the only place connecting her to the past and nurturing the life within her. The thought of losing it was unbearable. Determined to fight for the barn, Emma began to gather her courage. She resolved to share Margaret's story with the local community, hoping that the history and meaning woven into the barn's walls might sway opinion. The journal and letters were no longer just relics. They were evidence of a legacy worth preserving. Tom offered his support without hesitation, helping Emma prepare for the challenge ahead. Together, they planned to attend the upcoming town meeting, where the fate of the barn would be decided. The thought of speaking before a crowd was daunting, especially in her condition. But Emma knew that silence would mean surrender. As the days passed, Emma's physical strength waned, the cold and hunger taking their toll. Yet her resolve burned brighter than ever. The barn was a symbol of resilience, not only for Margaret, but now for herself. She would fight to protect it, to honor the stories it held, and to secure a future for the child she carried. One chilly morning, Emma stood by the barn's entrance, watching the sun rise over the fields. Tom arrived with a basket of supplies and a reassuring smile. "Ready for the meeting?" he asked gently. Emma nodded, steadying herself against the wooden post. "I have to be. For Margaret, for me, and for the baby." Together, they walked toward the town hall, the barn's fate and Emma's, hanging in the balance. The road ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges. But for the first time in a long while, Emma felt not just fear, but hope. The kindness of a stranger, the strength of a woman long gone, and the life growing within her had woven a fragile but unbreakable thread of courage. As they approached the gathering crowd, Emma took a deep breath, ready to share the story that had changed everything. The barn was more than a building. It was a testament to survival, community, and the enduring power of hope. And she would fight to ensure it remained standing, a beacon for those who came after. The town hall was a modest building, its brick facade weathered by years of wind and rain, much like the barn Emma fought to save. Inside, the air buzzed with murmurs and shifting chairs as neighbors, council members, and the developers' representatives gathered for the decisive meeting. Emma stood near the back, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the worn leather-bound journal to her chest. The weight of the moment pressed on her, but beneath it all, a fierce determination burned bright. Tom stood beside her, offering steady support with a reassuring glance. Their shared resolve gave Emma the courage she needed to face the room, a place filled with unfamiliar faces and skeptical eyes. The barn was fragile, her body was weary, and yet she knew this was her chance, to preserve the history and the shelter that had become her lifeline. When the floor was opened for public comments, Emma stepped forward slowly, her gaze sweeping across the gathered crowd. Her voice was soft at first, but gained strength with each word as she began to recount the story she had uncovered. The hidden legacy of Margaret, a woman who had lived on this land long ago, whose journals and letters revealed a tale of resilience, isolation, and quiet bravery during a time of hardship. She spoke of the barn itself, not just as a structure of wood and nails, but as a vessel of memory and hope. Emma shared the intimate details she had learned. Margaret's struggles through pregnancy in a lonely era, her acts of kindness during a brutal winter, and the community she had quietly helped sustain. The room grew still, the usual chatter fading beneath the weight of her words. As Emma spoke, the physical strain of her pregnancy became more apparent. A sharp pain gripped her abdomen, and she steadied herself against the podium for a moment, drawing a deep breath. The tension in the room was palpable. Some faces softened with empathy, others hardened with doubt. But the story was hers now, and she would see it through. Suddenly, the meeting erupted into debate. The developers' representatives argued for progress and economic growth, painting the barn as an obsolete relic standing in the way of opportunity. They spoke of new homes, jobs, and prosperity, their voices smooth and persuasive. Emma listened, feeling the weight of their arguments, but also the growing support from those who recognized the barn's significance. Neighbors who had once been indifferent began to speak up, recalling tales passed down about the farm and the woman who had lived there. They spoke of tradition, of community roots, and the importance of preserving history. The tide was turning, the barn's story resonating beyond Emma's voice. Amid the heated discussion, Emma's strength faltered again. Another contraction gripped her unexpectedly, sharp and unrelenting. She clutched the edge of the podium, her breath coming in short gasps. The room froze, eyes turning toward her in sudden concern. Tom was at her side in an instant, steadying her with gentle hands. "Emma, you need to sit down," he urged softly, his voice calm but urgent. But Emma shook her head, determination blazing in her eyes. "I can't stop now," she whispered. "This story, it's bigger than me." The community rallied around her in that moment. Council members called for a pause, offering water and chairs, while others murmured words of encouragement. The meeting's tone shifted from confrontation to compassion, a shared recognition of the stakes involved. As Emma settled into a chair, the room hushed, the weight of her presence underscored by the vulnerable strength she displayed. The story she carried was no longer just about a barn or a forgotten woman. It was about survival, motherhood, and the enduring power of legacy. The debate resumed, but with a new undercurrent of respect. Voices that had once pushed for demolition now spoke of preservation, of honoring the past while cautiously considering the future. Plans were proposed to designate the barn as a protected historical site, a compromise that would safeguard its legacy while allowing the town to grow thoughtfully around it. When the meeting adjourned, Emma was surrounded by neighbors and council members offering words of support. Tom remained by her side, his steady presence a balm to her weary body and spirit. Despite the pain and exhaustion, a flicker of hope had ignited, a chance to save the barn and the stories it held. As Emma stepped outside into the crisp evening air, the first stars twinkled faintly overhead. The weight of the day pressed down on her, but so did a quiet triumph. The barn, her fragile refuge, had found allies in this community. Its future was no longer uncertain. Tom helped Emma to his truck, carefully guiding her to a warm place where she could rest. The journey back to the barn was quiet, but filled with unspoken understanding. Emma's thoughts drifted to Margaret, imagining the woman's own struggles and small victories. The legacy they shared was alive and growing, woven through time by women who had faced hardship with undying courage. That night, as Emma lay beneath the patchwork blankets in the loft, she whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. For the kindness of strangers, for the strength found in forgotten stories, and for the life stirring within her. The barn's walls held more than history. They held hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Emma allowed herself a moment of peace. The fight to preserve the barn had begun, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose blossomed within her. In the quiet stillness, she dreamed of a future where the past and present could coexist, a future where stories like Margaret's and Emma's would never be forgotten. The morning after the town meeting dawned crisp and clear, the pale sunlight casting long shadows across the fields surrounding the barn. Emma awoke slowly, the ache in her body a steady reminder of both her advancing pregnancy and the emotional weight of the previous day. Yet beneath the fatigue, a spark of resolve burned brighter than ever. The community's willingness to listen had opened a door, and Emma was determined to walk through it. With Tom's help, she began the painstaking work of gathering more information about Margaret and the barn's history. They visited the local library and town archives, poring over faded newspapers, property records, and historical documents. Each discovery added layers to the story Emma had found in the journal, weaving together a richer tapestry of the past. One afternoon, as rain pattered gently against the library windows, Emma sat at a worn wooden table surrounded by stacks of brittle papers. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced the words of an old article detailing a particularly harsh winter decades ago. The same winter Margaret had described in her letters. The article credited a local woman with organizing relief efforts, rallying neighbors to share resources and weather the storm together. Emma's breath caught. The woman named was Margaret. The realization filled her with awe and renewed purpose. Margaret had not only survived her struggles, but had also been a quiet hero in her community, her bravery and compassion rippling outward in acts of kindness that saved lives. Emma felt the weight of that legacy settle on her shoulders, a mantle both heavy and inspiring. With each piece of evidence, Emma's connection to Margaret deepened. The farmstead was no longer just a place to hide. It was a beacon of resilience and hope. She imagined Margaret moving through the barn's rooms, her hands steady as she prepared food or tended to neighbors in need. The barn echoed with the whispers of those long-gone days, filling Emma's heart with strength. But the physical demands of pregnancy pressed ever closer. Emma's steps grew slower, her breath shorter, and nights became restless. Tom noticed the changes and grew more vigilant, offering support without hesitation. Together, they balanced the urgency of Emma's mission with the need to protect her health. As the days passed, Emma prepared to share her findings with the town. She envisioned a small exhibition within the barn, photos, letters, and artifacts that would bring Margaret's story to life for neighbors and visitors alike. The barn would transform from a forgotten relic into a living museum, a place where history and hope intertwined. One afternoon, as Emma rested in the loft, Tom brought news that the town council was considering officially designating the barn as a historical site. The progress was slow but promising, and Emma felt a cautious optimism bloom within her. Yet, even as plans took shape, threats to the barn's future lingered. The developer had not given up, and whispers of renewed pressure on the council reached Emma's ears. The fight was far from over. Still, Emma found solace in the stories she uncovered and the growing network of allies rallying around her cause. The barn had become a symbol, not just of the past, but of endurance and community. Through Margaret's legacy, Emma discovered the strength to face each new challenge. As twilight deepened over the fields, Emma sat by the open barn door, the journal resting in her lap. The air was cool, carrying the scent of earth and rain. She closed her eyes, feeling the gentle movement within her, a reminder of the future she was fighting to protect. With Tom's steady presence beside her, Emma dreamed of the day when the barn would stand restored and vibrant, a testament to the courage of women across generations. In that quiet moment, hope was no longer just a fragile ember. It was a flame kindled by history and heart, ready to light the path ahead. The air inside the town hall was thick with anticipation and murmurs, as the community gathered once more to discuss the fate of the barn. Emma arrived with Tom by her side, her hands resting protectively over her swelling belly. Each step she took felt heavier than the last, the weight of both her pregnancy and the cause she carried pressing down on her. Yet, beneath the physical strain, a fierce determination kept her moving forward. The room was filled with familiar faces, neighbors who had come to understand the significance of the barn, council members who wielded the power to decide its future, and a handful of skeptics still swayed by the promise of new development. Emma's heart pounded as she prepared to speak. The journal and letters she had gathered clutched tightly in her hands. When her turn came, she stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fatigue that tugged at her. She recounted Margaret's story once more, the struggles of a young woman facing pregnancy and isolation, the acts of bravery during a harsh winter that had saved lives, and the legacy woven into the very beams of the barn. Her words carried the weight of history and personal sacrifice, resonating deeply with those who listened. As Emma spoke, a sudden, sharp pain seized her abdomen. She paused, gripping the podium for support, her breath catching in a gasp. The room fell silent, eyes widening in concern as the reality of her condition became undeniable. Tom was immediately at her side, his steady presence a balm amid the sudden chaos. I think it's time," Emma whispered, her voice tinged with both fear and resolve. The meeting transformed from a formal debate into a scene of urgent care. Council members and neighbors rallied around her, offering water, blankets, and words of comfort. Someone called for an ambulance, and Tom held Emma's hand, grounding her as the contractions intensified. Despite the turmoil, Emma's spirit remained unbroken. The birth she faced within these walls was not just her own. It was the culmination of a journey that connected past and present, a testament to survival and hope. The barn's legacy, Margaret's courage, and the community's support converged in this defining moment. As paramedics arrived and prepared to transport her, Emma's gaze met Tom's. In his eyes, she saw unwavering support and quiet strength. She squeezed his hand, drawing courage from their shared bond. The ride to the hospital was swift, but filled with tension. Emma focused on steadying her breath, recalling Margaret's words of endurance and resilience. The life growing inside her was a beacon, a promise that the story would continue beyond hardship. Hours later, in a quiet room bathed in soft light, Emma gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The moment was tender and raw, a mixture of exhaustion and profound joy. As she held her daughter close, Emma whispered a name: Elizabeth, a tribute to the woman whose story had guided her through darkness. Back in the barn, the community's efforts to preserve the historic site gained renewed momentum. Emma's courage had inspired many, transforming the barn from a forgotten structure into a symbol of resilience and hope. The loft where she had discovered Margaret's journal became a place of reflection and celebration, honoring the legacies of women who had faced adversity with unwavering strength. As Emma settled into motherhood, surrounded by newfound friends and allies, she found solace in the continuity of life and history. The barn stood as a testament to the enduring power of stories. Stories that connected generations, healed wounds, and kindled hope. In the quiet moments between motherhood and recovery, Emma envisioned a future where her daughter would grow, knowing the strength of the women who came before her. The barn, once a shelter from the cold, had become a beacon for the community, a place where past and present intertwined, and where hope flourished against all odds. News of Emma's story spread quickly through town, carried by whispers and conversations that grew louder with each telling. The birth of her daughter, Elizabeth, amidst the fervor to save the barn, became a symbol not only of survival, but of renewal, life persisting against the odds. Local newspapers picked up the tale, their headlines celebrating the young mother's courage and the rediscovery of a forgotten legacy. With the public's attention now focused on the barn, support swelled. Volunteers arrived eager to help with restoration efforts, donating time and resources to breathe new life into the aging structure. The town council, moved by the groundswell of community backing, officially designated the barn a protected historical site, shielding it from demolition and securing funds for its preservation. Emma watched as the barn transformed from a dilapidated refuge into a place of purpose. Boards were repaired, windows replaced, and the loft where she had found Margaret's journal was cleaned and restored. Display cases were installed to showcase the artifacts, letters, photographs, and the worn leather-bound journal itself, offering visitors a glimpse into the past. The barn became a living museum, its walls echoing with stories of resilience and hope. Locals and visitors alike came to pay homage, drawn not only by the history, but by the powerful narrative of two women connected across time. Margaret's story, once hidden in dusty pages, now inspired a broader conversation about the contributions and struggles of women often overlooked in history. Emma found herself speaking at events, sharing the journey that had brought her from despair to purpose. Through it all, Emma's life settled into a new rhythm. Supported by friends she had made during the fight to save the barn, she found stability and strength. Elizabeth grew surrounded by love and the stories that had shaped her beginnings, a living testament to the endurance passed down through generations. The barn became more than a museum. It was a community center, a gathering place where people celebrated history and forged new connections. Workshops and storytelling sessions brought together young and old, fostering a sense of belonging and shared identity. Emma saw in these moments the true power of preservation, not just of buildings or artifacts, but of the human spirit. As the seasons turned, Emma reflected on the unexpected journey that had carried her from a desperate search for shelter to becoming a custodian of history and hope. The barn, once a forgotten relic, now stood as a beacon of resilience and renewal. Its story, and hers, had touched many lives, reminding the community of the strength found in facing adversity together. In quiet moments, Emma held Elizabeth close, whispering the stories of Margaret and the barn that had sheltered them both. The past and present intertwined, weaving a legacy that would endure long after the walls had been restored. Through her daughter, Emma saw the promise of a future shaped by courage, connection, and the enduring power of stories shared across time. The barn, once a fragile shelter battered by time and neglect, now stood proudly restored, its weathered beams carefully mended, the windows gleaming with fresh glass that caught the afternoon light. It had been transformed into a community center and museum, a place where stories were no longer whispered in solitude, but shared aloud, connecting past and present in a living tapestry of resilience. Emma watched as neighbors and visitors wandered through the space, their eyes tracing the displays that told Margaret's story alongside the broader history of the farm and its place within the town's heritage. The journal rested in a glass case at the center of the exhibit, a quiet testament to the woman whose courage had inspired so much change. Emma felt a deep satisfaction knowing that the once forgotten pages now held a place of honor, accessible to all who sought to understand. Her own life had settled into a rhythm shaped by both motherhood and community. Elizabeth, now several months old, slept peacefully in a cradle crafted by a local carpenter who had volunteered to help with the barn's restoration. The baby's presence was a constant reminder of hope and new beginnings, a living link between Emma's struggles and the legacy she was helping to preserve. Neighbors stopped by regularly, offering support and friendship. Emma found herself surrounded by a network she had once thought impossible, a community bound together by shared history and mutual care. The barn had become a gathering place, hosting workshops, storytelling circles, and celebrations that brought generations together. Through these moments, Emma witnessed the power of connection to heal wounds and build strength. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves drifted lazily from the trees, Emma sat in the loft, the very space where she had first discovered Margaret's journal months before. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air like tiny sparks of memory. She cradled Elizabeth in her arms, whispering the stories of the women who had come before them. Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperation of homelessness and uncertainty to the fulfillment found in preserving a legacy and nurturing new life. The barn was more than a building. It was a symbol of survival, courage, and the enduring strength of women across time. Margaret's story had been a beacon during Emma's darkest hours, offering solace and inspiration when hope seemed distant. Now, Emma knew that this legacy would live on through Elizabeth and the countless others touched by the barn's history. The past had been reclaimed and woven into the fabric of the present, ensuring that the sacrifices and triumphs of those before would never be forgotten. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over the fields, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. The barn's walls held stories of hardship and heroism, loss and love, all carried forward by the community she had helped nurture. In that quiet moment, she envisioned a future where Elizabeth and generations to come would grow up surrounded by the strength of their heritage. The barn stood as a testament to resilience and renewal, a place where history was honored and hope was kindled anew. Emma's journey had come full circle, from a frightened woman seeking refuge to a guardian of stories that would inspire and endure. Together with her daughter, she would carry this legacy forward, ensuring that the barn's light would shine brightly for years to come. The early morning light spilled gently across the barn's worn wooden floors, casting long shadows that mingled with the soft rustle of autumn leaves outside. Emma sat quietly in the loft, cradling Elizabeth in her arms, their breaths rising and falling in a calm rhythm. The child's small fingers curled against her chest, a tender reminder of the fragile yet unbreakable thread connecting past and future. Emma's thoughts drifted as she gazed out the window, the landscape stretching wide and familiar. The journey that had brought her here, to this place, this moment, felt both distant and immediate. From the depths of despair and uncertainty to the quiet strength she now carried within, her life had been reshaped by the stories she uncovered and the community that had embraced her. She thought of Margaret, the woman whose journal had first drawn her into this world of resilience and hope. Across decades and hardship, their lives had intertwined, bound by shared experiences of pregnancy, isolation, and unwavering courage. Margaret's story had not only illuminated the past, but had become a guiding light for Emma's own path forward. As Elizabeth stirred softly, Emma whispered the tales that had nurtured her spirit. Stories of women who had faced adversity with grace, whose struggles had paved the way for new beginnings. The barn itself, once a forgotten relic, had become a sanctuary for these narratives, a place where history was not just remembered, but lived and honored. In these quiet moments, Emma envisioned a future shaped by the legacy they carried. She imagined Elizabeth growing surrounded by the strength and wisdom of generations, her life enriched by the knowledge of those who came before. The barn would stand as a beacon, a place where stories were shared and resilience celebrated, inspiring all who entered its walls. The weight of the past no longer felt like a burden, but a source of strength, a foundation upon which Emma could build a life of purpose and connection. The journey from desperation to hope had transformed her, revealing the power of storytelling to heal wounds and forge new paths. Outside, the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of gold and rose, a promise of renewal and possibility. Emma held her daughter close, feeling the steady beat of her heart, a rhythm that echoed the enduring spirit of the women who had come before and those yet to come. Together, they represented continuity and change, resilience and renewal. The Barnes history lived on in their lives, a testament to the enduring power of hope and the unbreakable bonds that link past and future. Emma smiled softly, a quiet gratitude filling her heart. The path ahead was unknown, but she faced it with courage, born of connection and love. In the gentle morning light, mother and child rested, ready to embrace the unfolding story of their lives. One shaped by legacy, strength, and the promise of a hopeful tomorrow.